Should we go ahead and get started?
I'll stop my music.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to this installment of If Then Technology and Poetics, where we bring together writers, coders, and scholars investigating the relationships between humans and machines and the works of art, literature, and visual knowledge they produce together. I am Dr. Lillian von Bertram of the UMass Boston Digital Poetics Lab, and with Carly Schnitzler, a grad student at UNC, we organize the working group / workshop series. And we're very excited to see many familiar faces alongside some new folks who we've not met yet. And we are very thrilled and very happy to have Angi Chow with us today for this workshop. And Angi Chow is the director of a design thinking, engineering, and computer science program at an independent pre-K to 12 school in the Bay Area. Formerly, she created and ran the Makerspace program at an independent all-girls school in the Bay Area. And as a Processing Foundation teaching fellow, she developed the starter kit for teaching creative coding with p5.js to empower and support teachers who are themselves learning CS to teach creative coding. Thank you so much for being here, Angi. Really excited to learn from you today, and we'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. It is a joy to be here. So yeah, I am super excited to share, to kind of play together. We're going to do some coding together, and a lot of what I'll be sharing are things that I do in my classes. As Dr. Bertrand just said, I work right now at a school called the Nueva School. It is a pre-kindergarten through 12th grade, and I am the director of the program, but I also do teach the required computer science classes in the middle school. Currently 6th grade and 8th grade are my homes. So I just actually came out of an 8th grade class this morning. So I'm gonna go ahead and share screen. I have to admit, I am a little rusty over Zoom, but I think that's a good thing because that means I've been teaching in person this year. Okay, all right, so now everybody has disappeared. Give me a second. Okay. I think, can you all see the share screen? Give me a couple thumbs up. Thank you. Awesome. If I am on social media, sometimes, well, not while I'm in school, it's totally blocked at my school. But if you do want to follow me, those are my handles. And then I think one thing to say is we are recording this session, and I hope that I have your permission that to post this on my YouTube channel later. I have a nascent YouTube channel called Coding Together, where I try to kind of post things that other teachers and other educators can use to, if they want to incorporate some playful coding projects in their classrooms. And that's sort of kind of my wheelhouse, like really playful, whimsical things with that allow for a lot of creativity. All right, so to start, I would love to find out who's in the room. Oops, like there. I don't think we have time, unfortunately, to go around everybody. So if you could just put in chat, you don't need to put in chat your name, but I would love to see your pronouns if it's not already part of your name. And then what do you do now? As in, like, what's your role, and then something creative and playful that you like to do. It can be related to your work, but it doesn't have to be. It could be something you do in your free time. Yeah, so I would love to see some chat waterfall. I call this the chat waterfall, which allows everyone to sort of see who else is in the room and what commonalities we have. Let's see. We have 19 people, which is great. While we're waiting for everyone to type, I'll share something creative and playful I like to do in addition to coding. I am really big into cooking and baking, and I was part of the pandemic train that got on the sourdough thing. So I'm still on the sourdough train. And now I'm like messing with different ratios of flour, and sometimes it's gross, and then sometimes it's not gross. So awesome, thank you. So we have software engineers and poets, instructional design leads. And sorry if I look like I'm looking up, but I have an external monitor over here. Oh, a teacher teaching APCS, great. Creative coder, improvising poetry and gaming, awesome. Lots of poets, that's so great. Digital studies professor, making bots games, generative poetry. At Stanford, learning P5. Oh, pickles and gardening, nice. That's cool. Lots of poets. Ooh, CSS. I actually don't know very much about CSS. I learned it way back when. I feel like it's gone very, very far now. What was called facilitator and training. Cool. Yoga. Comp sci student. Super. Please keep, if you haven't shared about yourself yet, please keep going. I may not be reading off everyone, but I appreciate you sharing a little about yourself. And from that little bit that I kind of glanced at, it does seem like we have kind of a variety of folks in the room, some with not so much experience with coding and some with more. And I want to make sure everyone feels that they are welcome here. And hopefully the project I'll be sharing with you provides kind of entry points for those who are more new, and then really kind of just like no ceiling for those who have done P5 or some sort of coding before, and you can sort of just take it wherever you go. And that's actually one of the challenges I have when I teach here, because my classes are required classes, meaning students are not selecting in. I do get kids who have never really coded before, as well as kids who've been coding since in second grade. And so that's why a lot of the projects I design tend to be what I call low floor, no ceiling projects. So that everyone can get something out of it and get something made. All right, so let's get going. So some of the my introduction may be kind of repetitious or like for those of you who have experience coding, so just hang with me for a little bit. I promise we'll get to coding very quickly. So for those who may not be maybe less familiar with coding, I just want to kind of make an analogy about what coding is, right? Like you hear about coding, it's like, you know, skill of the future and like STEM jobs and all of that stuff. I just think of coding as just writing instructions. That's really all we're doing. Like, you know, we don't need to get fancy about it. Like we write plenty of instructions in our daily lives. Like we've all read recipes. Some of you may have written recipes, right? That's actually coding, because you're trying to get somebody else to repeat the steps that you've done with an end result, right? These days, a lot of times when you think of the term coding or computer science or programming, we think of, especially where I live, we think of people in Silicon Valley and the cafe, like coding, making a startup, right? Like we think of the companies, like the Facebooks and the Googles and the Slacks, and also a lot of times we care, like there's a lot of mention about like, oh, what languages do you know? This happens with the kids I teach. It's like, oh, it says if like it's like a badge to be collected, how many languages you know. But yes, coding could be all of that, but what I care more about is kind of the other side of coding. Like these are some of the things that have really inspired me to kind of pursue coding on the more creative angle. Leah Beakley used to be a professor at MIT. I think she's now at University of New Mexico, I believe. She's an incredible artist educator who really thinks about coding and just technology, but really how it merges with traditional crafts. So this I think this pattern is something that she generated, I think with processing potentially, and then she actually laser cut it onto, I think, like paper or fabric. So it's beautiful, right? So kind of coding in terms of making artifacts, artistic artifacts. On the right-hand side, you see, I think that's a website many of you are probably familiar with. Coding can help us kind of make sense of information. There's a lot of data and information out there these days, and coding is a way for us to communicate with each other. There's a big field, I'm sure many of you have heard about it, like kind of journalism, but like data journalism, and that's actually what I teach my 8th grade class on. And then finally, if you haven't run across it, highly recommend Nikki Case's work. Parable of the Polygons it's a digital story that is actually also a simulation. So it really it uses kind of coding and computer science to teach people how segregation can occur in societies, and how, in fact, it's a very simple and small preference for people for shapes that are like yourself could result in segregation. So, you know, just these ways of using coding, these are what inspire me and why I kind of ended up kind of in the P5 processing realm. So for anyone who's not yet familiar with p5.js, which is what we'll be using today, it is an environment that's based on processing. Processing is kind of the parent of p5.js. And processing was designed to make coding really accessible for artists, designers, educators, folks who are new to coding. P5 itself, p5.js, was created by an artist and educator named Lauren McCarthy. I believe she's now at UCLA. Plus a whole crew of contributors. Like it is open source, so it really relied on the work of volunteers. And it's meant to be a reinterpretation of processing for today's web, right? So processing was written in a language called Java, which confusingly is actually a different language than JavaScript. And JavaScript is what a lot of today's web run on. So Lauren decided to say, hey, let's take the beauty of processing and put it in and kind of convert it to JavaScript so that it makes things a lot more kind of friendly to today's web browsers, as well as highly shareable. It is a project supported by the Processing Foundation, who also supported my teaching fellowship this summer. And the reason that I care a lot about using P5, and in fact, I will show you right now, and I showed this actually at always on the first day of my classes, my middle school classes, is like, we have endless amounts of choices out there when we're picking development environments. So I pick p5.js for its values, actually, and not so much for speed or efficiency or anything like that. Right center on the front page is a community statement for p5.js that really talks about how this space is for everybody. Everyone's welcome, no matter how you identify, and whether this is your first day touching programming or whether this is your 50th year. So I show my students this because I think they hear, especially here in Silicon Valley, they hear a lot of messages about what they should care about. And I want them to think that, you can care about something else and still like technology. So that's another reason. I'm really into the work of P5 and Processing Foundation. As the kids say, TLDR, really what P5 is it makes it fun and easy for everyone to code neat stuff and share it with other people. So hopefully you'll see that other day. Usually, one of the ways I start is by allowing everyone to play with the introductory video. I think for the sake of time, I'm just going to kind of leave that there. Know that you can always go to hello.p5js.org. I usually assign this as homework. Actually, my first homework when I introduce P5JS is for kids to go home and play with this. This is a 10-minute interactive video. So this is not a video that you put on your headphones and like go on your stationary bike or whatever. This is one that you want to be sitting in front of a computer because they will ask you to click around and stuff, and it kind of really shows you all the different things you can do with P5. Cool. All right. So what we are going to do today, as we'll get to it, is as I told Carly and Dr. Bertram, I'm not very good at doing like workshops where it's just me speaking the whole time. I want people to be doing stuff. So that's what we're going to be doing, even though I just finished a bunch of talking. Today we're going to play with words. I hear there's a lot of people who's really into words here. There's a lot of poets. So I'm going to show you a couple of inspirations. And then a really quick example I whipped together. And then we're just going to go through the process of how you create what I call a wordplay project. And for those of you who are more familiar with P5 or processing or programming, please feel free to just play and experiment if you don't feel like you need to listen to my explanations. But that's hopefully we'll all end up in a place where we can kind of share our projects with each other and just have some fun. So today, basically for our project, we will be playing with words in code. So let me play, for example, this animation. These are very short, and hopefully they will load. So here you can just see it's a word lush, but then it's animated. It's beautiful, and the animation kind of hints at the meaning, right? Or it's conveys the meaning somehow, right? Here's another fun one. That's a bunch of different words. There's music, but I don't think you need to hear it. I'm hearing it apparently. It's like a lot of really just simple ways to convey meaning of a single word, and some of them are really clever, right? I like confused a lot. So that's kind of the idea. And for a proof of concept, I created one. Don't worry too much about the code right now. Just with the word float. I want to show you this so that you can, we're going to go through some setup, but in the back of your head, start thinking about what's a word that either means something to you, or you could just randomly pick a word. There are online Pictionary generators. If you're not the sort to be like, I have the word that I want to do, just go have somebody else generate it for you. So go search for a Pictionary generator or something like that, and they will pick a word for you. Okay. All right, so oops, how do I not do that? Okay, while you're thinking of the word, I want to share a few agreements that I hope we can all honor for the rest of this session. The whole thing is really about playing, experimenting, and we laugh when things don't work. We don't say, "Oh, this," like we don't say like, "I'm so dumb." Like my kids always say this, just like, "Oh, I'm so bad at this." I'm like, no, no one's born good at this. You're just not like you will get better. And the whole point isn't that you're good at it now, because then why else are you here, right? So when something doesn't work, just know that it's part of the process and we laugh about it. And then we are all learning, even those who have more experience, right? So, and then please don't feel like you should stay stuck on a problem. If something doesn't work, please ask for help. And I think it's in those moments where things don't work and we can, then a lot of times in my classes, when things don't work, I'll like kind of ask the kid to share the screen so that we can all look together, be like, oh, this is why it doesn't work. And then it's really through experience, seeing how things cannot work, that we develop our toolbox for debugging as well, right? Like the first time we see like, oh, it's missing a semicolon, that's why things don't work. We may not understand that, but the fifth time we'll be like, wait, maybe it's a semicolon that's missing, right? So it's really through experience that we build up our toolbox. And we're going to be celebrating each other's successes, attempts, and works in progress. We will get to different places by the end of the workshop today. And so all of those are great. And then kind of echoing Seymour Papert, we're going to be having some hard fun. All right. Oh, thank you, Zach, for putting the Pictionary generator. All right, so setting up, for those of you who have worked with P5 before, you probably will not need to do this. This is quite simple. If you could head over to editor.p5js.org, and maybe I can type this here. Oh, thank you, Carly. What you can do is, if you don't already have an account, please create an account. You'll see that in the kind of top right-hand corner, there should be a link to say sign up. Or login, right? And then all they'll ask from you is your email and a password. And then once you log in, you should see something like the screen there. I'll wait a moment. You can give a thumbs up reaction or on camera thumbs up. If you got there, then I'll get a sense of how many people are ready to move on. Thank you. I see like about 5 thumbs up, 6, 7. Think about half. Thank you. Thank you, Sean. All right, we'll wait a little bit, but that's cool. If you're finishing setup, I'll just kind of explain what we're seeing. So in the window, what you're seeing is like there's an area where you're going to be writing your code. That there's already some code written there. We'll deal with that in a bit. And then below that, your color scheme probably defaults to this white color scheme, which means there's a gray box on the bottom. That's called a console. And so if something goes wrong, or you ask the program to specifically print something to the console, that's where you'll see it. So a lot of times the console is really helpful to us when things aren't working. And then on the right, we're under the little part where it says preview, that's where you're going to see what your code does. P5 is really simple. Another reason I love introducing it, it's not cluttered with 1,000 different buttons and 50 different options to do stuff. It's really just like write some code, hit play, see what happens. So the startup is very quick. So there's already some code written there. If you can go ahead and hit play for me, and then either share on chat, or actually, yeah, quickly share on chat. What do you see when you hit play? Just to make sure everyone's got things running okay. Nice. Jasper sees a great box. Anyone else? Great box. All right. Same. Awesome. If you get great box, good job. You've written your first program. Woo! So let's really figure out why that is a great box. So that's, hopefully you saw something like that. Yay. So in order for us to really understand how to code in P5, we do have to talk a little bit about these 2 things called setup and draw. So that's the code that's already written for you. So they're called functions, and we'll talk a little bit about what function means. But in the code that's already written for you, you probably see these exact same lines that I have on the left, right? Function setup, and then some round parentheses, and then some curly brackets, and then it says create canvas 400, 400, right? And then there's function draw with the line that says background on it. So one thing to note is that when you hit the play button in p5.js. Essentially, what p5 will do is look for a function, look for something called setup, and setup runs only once. I think of it as a bunch of runners lining up for the race, right? They're stretching, they're tying, making sure their shoes are tied really well, they're putting their feet on those little thingies that I have no idea what they're called, right? That happens only once. Like once you hit play, like they're not going to come back around and tie their shoes again, right? Like they're just going to go, right? So setup is the lining up. Anything you associate, any instructions that you associate with the function setup will only run once at the start. And then function draw is those runners going around and around and around the racetrack. So it loops, right? So it just keeps going and going until you hit the stop button, right? So that's the distinction between those two functions, right? So what are functions, right? Functions, kind of like paragraphs, I think of it, or chapters, whatever. There's some analogy to writing, but functions basically group a bunch of instructions together, right? As a kind of like paragraphs, right? And usually those instructions are to accomplish a certain thing, right? So here we have two functions, function setup. Right now, create canvas is part of function setup, right? So now it's basically setup becomes the nickname for whatever you write inside the curly brackets. In this case, let's just make a canvas and we're calling that setup. In draw right now, we're just saying set the background. In fact, that command background also clears the background. Think of Etch a Sketch where you're just erasing everything. So what essentially we're saying is inside the function setup and draw, we are giving commands to the program to do stuff. So in the function setup, we're saying, hey, please make me a space to draw. And in function draw, we're saying, set the background to some color, right? And clear it, right? But as we said, what really is happening is when you hit play, it's like, make me a canvas, set the background, 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 right? Because it's looping over and over and over again. That will actually become super important when we get to animation. Okay, so for now, just be like, I don't know why I'm setting background over and over again, but that is what it is. And you will hear people, kind of computery people, the jargon they will use is they say we're making function calls, like when you do these giving commands. Right? Another thing, I think another way I describe kind of these commands is, these create canvas and background commands, or quote unquote function calls, are basically things that P5 already know how to do. And the reason they know how to, the computer knows what to do when you use these commands is because the lovely people at P5 already wrote some code that's hidden from you that has already taught the computer what this means. So imagine if you have a dog and you've trained the dog to sit, right? That is a function you can now ask your dog to perform, right? Like once you train all the steps of getting your dog to sit, you could just be like, please sit, please sit. You're making a function call. Because now all of the muscle things that the doggy has to do, it knows it. You've trained him to do it. Okay. All right. And then one last thing before we start playing, all of those little parentheses and curly braces and semicolons, they do matter. Kids are always asking me like, what's with all the punctuation? Like it does matter. It's called syntax. The jargon is syntax. It is part of the rules of this particular language called JavaScript. Different languages have different rules, but in JavaScript, the rules is like semicolon ends commands. It's sort of like a period at the end of a sentence. And then the other stuff, like the curly brackets, group stuff together. So when I say, things are part of this function setup, like create canvas is part of this function setup. What I mean is it exists between the two curly brackets, right? And there's always sort of matching pairs of curly brackets, or the program will complain, the computer will complain at you. All right, so all of these, that's what kind of, if you've never heard of this before, it's cool. Just kind of let it flow over you, and you'll probably run into this later when you're like, things are not working. And I'll be like, oh, check some matching braces, right? These are things you'll get with experience. So we're going to do some wordplay now, and we're going to write code. We're going to make some mistakes. And remember, we celebrate mistakes. As I always say to kids in my class, when they were like, oh, it doesn't work again. I'm like, yay, that means you're coding, because nothing ever works as coders. If things work, you're not coding, you're just copying someone else's thing, right? If you're actually coding, things should not really work right away. All right, so I'm going to go through kind of a code along. If you have some experience with coding or P5, please just like kind of put me, like put me in the background. You can even mute me if you want. But for those who are less familiar or who are more new to it, I'm going to kind of do a kind of live coding demo, and you're free to follow along. So we're just going to kind of draw a word. We're not going to worry about making it move yet. So I feel like I don't want to do flow. I'm going to do sync. I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to make a new file. So here's some of the commands we'll go over is how do you draw text on the screen, how to use select colors, and how we might even get to shapes, right? So hopefully all of you maybe already have in mind a word. If not, that's okay. You can also use sync if you would like. So I said, like, we have this function set up in function draw. Oh, and also please feel free to drop questions in the chat anytime. Or if you feel really brave, you can just unmute. And then I'll try to keep my eye on the chat too. So we said that here, there's function draw, right? I'm going to just give myself some space to work. So I'm just inserting a bunch of new lines. We're going to put everything in draw, although for the first part of what we're doing, it actually doesn't really matter too much whether it's in setup or draw. But if draw makes more sense to me because I'm drawing, right? So I'm just going to do that. So the quickest way to get some text on the screen is using the command called text, making the function call called text. But just like if I told you to make me some cookies, you may have some extra questions, right? You're like, clarifying question, what kind of cookies, how many cookies, and when do you need it, right? Like, so if I just say, hey, P5, draw me some text, it needs some more information. It needs something clarified. What do I want? What kind of text? Like, what exactly do I want it to print? And where do I want it, like, where to print it, right? So that's where we put stuff inside those round parentheses. It's to give that extra bit of information to P5 so it knows exactly what it needs to do. So in this case, let's say my word is sync. So I'm just going to type in double quotes the word sync. Double quotes indicate to P5 that this is what is called a string, but what it means is like, no, literally just put whatever I put in the double quote. Like, don't try to interpret it, just print it on the screen. And then the next bit of information is where to print this text. P5 operates on a coordinate system, much like many of the graphs that we're used to in math class. The thing that's slightly different is that the top left corner of our canvas, so right, this little dot, I think you can see my cursor maybe, that's 0, 0. Okay, I don't know, can you guys see my cursor? I think you can, right? Okay, thank you. So let's say if I do put it at 0, 0, let's see what happens. And then I'm gonna end it with a semicolon. I will say P5 is really nice. If you miss the semicolon, it doesn't complain at you. Okay, so I didn't do anything, did you? Anything? Well, okay, now I'm gonna try playing. Okay, well, maybe something's messed up with my coordinate system. So I'm just gonna play 2 different numbers. Oh, look, now I got something. So now I'm just, it maybe has to do with like 100, 100, is that the middle of my word? Is that the top left of my word? Whatever it is. So you can kind of mess around. I'm actually gonna put my word at the top of my screen. So X is the horizontal axis. So X is the first number. And then Y is the next number. And one of the things I do, and I ask my students to do, is like, they're used to taking notes in classes. The way you take notes in computer science classes is through comments. In JavaScript, comments are indicated by 2 slashes, and it'll gray it out in the editor for you. What that means is that the computer will ignore any line that starts with 2 slashes, because it knows it's just a note that the humankind is leaving for itself, and that computer kind should just ignore. So I'm going to put like, so text needs the thing to print, and then the X coordinate, and then the Y coordinate. So I remember the order. So if I want it to sort of be in the middle, right? My canvas, I've told it is like size 400, 400. So I'm going to say like, okay, I want it to be at X 200, but if I want it to start at the top, maybe I will put it at 10. Let's see what happens there. Okay, so it's like at the very top. All right. How are your words doing? Any wishes and desires for your word? Drop it in chat or unmute yourself. What do you wish your word would look like? I would love to answer some questions. Ooh, you like to like change scale. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, cool. So there's some desire for different colors. So we'll talk about that. Okay. So there's undulating in terms of scale. So let's also talk about how do you make the size different. for text. Okay. Ooh, what if you want to break it up so it follows the corner? Oh, I don't even know what that means. What does that mean? Is it Ching Ing? Would you mind unmuting and explaining a little bit what your idea is? I love it. Whatever.
Well, if you're using sync, like putting the SI in the top right-hand corner, like horizontally, and then the NK vertically.
Oh, like so parts of the word will sync, kind of.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, we can deal with that later. I like that idea. How to make the word tree look like a tree. I like to change the typeface, the shadow. Okay, so some of these, let's cover some of these. So I heard something about color, something about scale, something about typeface. So let's do some of the quicker kind of single command stuff first. To change the size of the text, there is a command called text size, and it takes one number. So the extra information we need to give it is a number. I'm going to make it hilariously large. 50 might be really big. It's like really huge. You can play around with this number. You can make it like 1,000 if you want. I just don't know if it'll fit on the screen if it's 1,000. Okay, so text size allows you to change the size. I also heard color. So for color, there are a few different types of color stuff you can do. But the thing I always think it helps me to remember is setting up the colors has to go before you draw anything. So I always ask my students to imagine I just gave you a box of crayons and a piece of paper, and I asked you to draw me a red triangle. What's the first thing you have to do? Right? You have to pick up the red crayon, right? You have to find the red crayon and pick it up. Then you can draw. So P5 is the same way. You need to choose, you need to pick up your color before you do the drawing, right? And the drawing command in this case is text, right? That's the thing that actually puts it on the canvas. So let's set up some colors. So fill is the command to set up the kind of, the fill of the color, so the inside, right? And then the way, there are many ways to specify color, but the default way is using 3 numbers. It's called RGB mode. So red, green, blue. So you're going to give it 3 numbers. The first one representing how much red there is in the color. The second, how much green, and the third, how much blue, right? So purple is sort of lots of red, lots of blue, less green, right? If you maybe you remember that from art class. So 255 is the maximum color can be, like, so kind of how much you want to turn up the dial. So it goes between 0 to 255. Seems like a random number, but there is a technical reason behind it. It is the biggest number you can represent with 8 binary digits. That's why it's 255. And it doesn't really matter if you remember that or not, but look, oh, mine's pink. I don't really like it. So I'm gonna make it a little less red, maybe. I don't know. Oh, this is purplish. Yes, great. Mark also has an observation, which is it sometimes also it accepts some colors inside string. So you could put purple inside string. I wonder what you get. I'm gonna try it. Ooh, I like, that's a nice purple. That's like a dark purple, but you can also kind of do that. The other thing you can do if you're not good at mixing color is literally Google color picker. And there's a color picker tool. So then you can just pick your favorite purple and then just copy the RGB color. There's also lots of cool sites to help you pick color palettes that I love, but that's later. Okay, so now let's say I've got my purple text. Now you're like seeing like really picky me who wants things to be a little brighter. Okay, and then I'm gonna make the text bigger. Sync, and then I want to move it down because I can't see it. I don't like that I can't see it, right? So now you can kind of start messing around where to place that word. Okay, and then what was that? Change the typeface. So typeface you can change. I believe the command is, actually let's not do I believe. Let's just look it up because learning how to read the reference is also really useful. So if you search for p5.js.org and go to the homepage, you should be able to click the reference, which tells you a bunch of the commands you can use. In particular, in this case, we're doing a lot of stuff with typography. So we're going to click typography. And so, yes, the command is called text font. And if you click there, it'll show you some examples of how to use it. So in this case, I'm just going to copy text font. And Georgia is like kind of got the serifs, right? So that's nice. That's nice. Very classical. It's nice. So you can try whatever fonts that you have installed probably. There are ways to load in super fancy fonts. That's probably beyond what we could do today, but essentially you load in a font definition file and then you can use it. All right. Cool. How are folks doing? I see lots of intent looking, which means you're coding. That's how I tell my students are coding. It's just intently looking at this. Wow. It's so funny because like anytime any administrator used to stop into my Zoom class, I'm like, there's literally nothing to look at because they're not even looking at the Zoom screens. They're all just coding. So it just looks like a bunch of foreheads, like looking like this. Okay. And then I think I really like Ting-Ying's idea, which is like, maybe I want the letters to sync in different times. So there are a couple of different ways to do that. One way is to force the actual text to be just two different text lengths. And then later on, we'll be able to kind of control them differently. So let's say, I think like, maybe I do something like this. We'll see what happens. I have no idea. Now it looks really large, but we'll see. Okay, you get the idea. All right, I think, let's see. Yeah, and one thing I forgot to say is like for this project, it doesn't really matter what word you choose, although I tend to prefer verbs because verbs tend to go with kind of animation and making things move, but whatever it is, I think I'll give folks a few more minutes to draw out their word, and please drop questions. What other thing you might want to do to your word? Can you change the orientation, like make the text go from top to bottom instead of left to right? You can. Yes, so those of you who care about this, feel free to listen. Otherwise, you may want to just, kind of shut me out and work on your thing. So you can do rotations. Rotations are a little bit tricky, but totally possible. So let me actually go back to just having my sync be one word. So it's a little bit easier to illustrate. So the command is just called rotate. But so let's just try it. Let's say I want to rotate it 45 degrees, right? So if I just do that, you'll be like, did it do it? This looks weird. So what's actually happening is there's a few more things we have to do and then just rotate. So the first thing is, I don't know how many of you remember from math class, but there are two ways to measure angles. One is in terms of what's called radians, so units of pi, and the other is in terms of degrees. Many of us think more in terms of degrees. However, P5 defaults to radians, which is units of pi. So the first thing we have to do if we actually want to work in degree is tell it that we want to work in degrees by using the command angle mode with a capital M, and then inside a parenthesis, degrees in all capital. So that's just saying like, hey, P5, from now on, whenever I talk about angles, it's going to be in units of degrees. The second thing you have to know, and I need to annotate on my screen to really show this, hopefully this will show up. So when I have, let's say I have a rectangle and I want to rotate it so it becomes a diamond, right? What is happening? What we're like essentially kind of rotating it, like let's say 45 degrees in some direction. What P5's rotate command does, however, is it rotates with respect to what's called the origin of the coordinate plane. So it rotates it in with respect to the 0, 0 point. So what does that mean? That means like instead of doing the thing where it just rotates into a diamond, what it's trying to do is something more like this. Okay, so that's not usually what we want, right? Because 0, 0 is here. So it's basically like if you imagine like you put up like a nail with a string there, it rotates like that's the 45 degrees it tries to draw. But there is a way to make it rotate in place. What you do, yeah, the rotating canvas is so confusing. What you do is basically change its world. So say like, dude, I know you only know how to rotate it with respect to 0, 0. So I'm just going to change where 0, 0 is for you. And then you'll do the thing I want it to do. And the way to change it is to use the translate command. So translate essentially moves the origin to wherever you say it is, right? So let's say I want to move the origin to the middle of my canvas. Okay. Then I can say rotate 45 degrees. So now, again, I need to annotate. So now my origin is like here-ish, right? So when I rotate, and if I draw a shape right in here, now when it rotates, you should go whoop, like this, like rotate in place. So we can try that. So I'm rotating or translating to the middle of my canvas. And then I'm saying and then I'm setting up that whatever I draw next will be rotated 45 degrees. I'm not going to do it. Well, I can do it to sync. Then because you've moved the origin, whenever you put, like you draw a shape, whatever XY coordinate you put on next will be in that new coordinate system, right? So where 0, 0, 0 is now in the middle. So if I want my text to be in the middle, I now need to put 0, 0 instead. And then if I hit play, it should kind of look a little bit more like rotating in place.
I'm sorry, can you explain the 0, 0 part? I think I lost you there.
Yeah, so you mean the translate part?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so so translate the command. Okay, so if you start from here, so usually 0, 0 is like at this upper left corner, right? That's 0, 0. And actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to comment out my text because I think it's a little bit easier to see with a shape instead. So let me do this. So let's say I want to make ellipse is how you draw a circle. So I'm going to put ellipse. Don't worry too much about all these numbers right now, but I'm basically trying to draw an oval in the middle of my canvas. Let me make it big, just as an illustration. So like my oval looks like that. Great, great. So if I wanted to rotate it 45 degrees, I just kind of want like a kind of tilted oval, right? So intuitively, we would just say like, let's rotate it 45 degrees and go blip, but it doesn't, like you can see it just like moves it off the canvas. And that's because what's happening is it's rotating with respect to the origin. So the origin is here, 0, 0 is there. And we had our little oval like, you know, like right here, right? So when it's rotating, it's like going, like pretend you like put a like nail here with a string tied to here. And then you're just swinging that whole thing 45 degrees over. So that's what rotate does, is with respect to 0, 0. Now, that's not usually what we want. So instead, if we can move the origin so that it's literally in the middle of our shape, then there is no string for it to swing. So when it rotates, it's just going to rotate within itself. So in order to do that, we can say translate. So translate means move my origin to the 200, 200 point. So that part of the code is saying now this is my origin. And then this, so that's this part of the code. And then the rotate 45 degrees is saying like, okay, whatever I draw next, I want you to rotate that 45 degrees with respect to the origin. And then if I draw my ellipse in the new coordinate plane at 0, 0, it now rotates it just within itself. So it doesn't do this crazy like swinging it off canvas thing. Don't know if that helped. It is very confusing, the rotation. So anyone who went, but so then how would you actually do this for the text, right? So if let's say I want my text to be rotated maybe 90 degrees. I don't know if it's negative 90 or 90. I should be able to just say, translate it to wherever you want the text to go, right? In this case, I'm put it in the middle, but I could also just say like, I want to move my origin to where it was before, which is 200, maybe like a 50. So it's like sort of closer to the top. And then say, I want you to then, I also want to set up a rotation for 90 degrees. And then now I'm going to draw my text. And then at the new 0, 0. So that's how you can kind of turn it. Now you may not want to do this for all your shapes, in which case there's this handy thing, which is called push and pop, which essentially I say is kind of like allowing yourself to do an undo later. So pop is like undo all of that, like so that whatever shape I draw next isn't rotated like crazy. So like if I now do a sync here at 200, 200, I should be back to where it originally was. But if I don't do the push and pop, then everything I do afterwards will be rotated and translated. Okay. All right, are we ready to move on to do some animation, do we think? Kind of give me a thumbs up. I see a couple of thumbs up. All right. Okay. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, cool. So I'm going to erase some of this stuff. I'll just comment these out because I'm not going to do the rotation. So let's see. Now I have to move this back to 200 and this to 50. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Elaine. It is one of the most confusing things I've tried to explain. Like I'm unsatisfied with my explanation every time, but it's just I think one day I should literally bring a board in with like a nail and a string and a shape and actually just like do it. I should just make that. That would make it a lot easier. Okay, so let's say now, I'm gonna go back to the slides. If you're still working on your code, that's totally fine. Keep working on it and sort of half listen, and then we will now learn how to animate. Okay, so we're gonna make stuff move. It sounds, I don't know, don't be intimidated, but when I say this and then the kids are like, no, right? They're like, how are we gonna do this, right? Like they're like, it's gonna require so much code. It will not require that much code, actually. So think about, you actually already have probably a very good intuitive sense of how to make animation. You may not just know it yet. If you are familiar with flipbooks like this hilarious candy corn one, that's essentially animation. That like what animation is you're drawing something over and over again, but when you draw it over and over again, you just make tiny little changes, right? So you draw a frame of the candy corn not dancing, and then you draw the next frame, which is candy corn with the hand over here, and then the next one with the candy corn over there, right? Like if you've made a flipbook or if you played with a flipbook, that is exactly what we're going to be doing in p5.js. And the nice thing is, remember that draw function I kept talking about in the beginning and how it loops over and over and over and over again? That's the thing that's doing the flipping for us, right? So which means if we put our instructions to draw a scene inside the function draw, but make that scene change little by little every time, then we'll essentially create an animation. And making the thing change little by little, coding makes it really easy for us using a concept called variables. Okay, so the way you think about variables, I call it 4 ingredients to successful variabling. I actually forgot. Oh, here, I can usually find something on a desk. So I think of variables as a box. It's just a container. That's all it is. And this box, you can call it whatever you want. So let's say I put a post-it. I don't actually know what this says. It's not my desk. So let's say I call my variable where. So I'll be like, okay, this box is called where. And I'm going to store the number 1 in it. That's what that first line of code is saying. Let where equals 1. Let is a special word that JavaScript knows. So P5 also knows. That's saying, what I'm about to tell you, just hold your horses. It's going to be a variable. Just chill out. Let where equals 1. I also like how declarative it is. Let where equals 1. So that's called declaring a variable in computer science speak. And then when you say let where equals 1, equals 1 is you're giving it a value to start. So it's like putting something into that container called a variable. And that's in computer science we call initializing your variable. So at this point, we have a variable called where. Okay, well, I don't have post-its here. Okay. Oh, I do have post-its. All right, so our variable is called where. I think right now it is 1, right? So then we have this function setup, which now you're like, okay, whatever. And then down here on this line, let me annotate down here where I have this ellipse line. So we didn't really talk too much about the ellipse line, but the ellipse is another drawing function where essentially it allows you to draw an ellipse. And the first 2 numbers is the X and Y position. Where should I draw the ellipse? And then the last 2 number is how big I want to draw that ellipse. So if you give it 10, 10, it's a perfect circle of size 10, right? So ellipse 200 where, so that purple part that I highlighted, you're using whatever is stored in this variable where, which currently is number 1, right? To draw the ellipse, right? Then the last part, when you're using a variable, is thinking about how to change it, right? Because it's not a variable. A variable should vary. So how will it vary? So you have to change it. So where equals to where plus 1 means whatever the value of where is, we're going to add 1 to it and now stick that back into the variable, right? So That's one time through the draw loop. The next time you're going to draw the ellipse, and now at the position defined by the variable where, which is 2. And then once you do that, you're going to add 1 to it, and now that variable is 3. Okay. So this is how you can slowly make small, tiny changes to your scene, to your drawn scene, in order to get the illusion of movement. Okay, so here we go. Let's try it out. So the first thing we want to do, oh, for some reason my annotate is still up. Clear. Okay, good. Okay. First thing is we need to declare our variable and initialize. We're using jargon now, folks. But like it's like I feel like it's just computer science people's way to make us feel special, because all it is you're just telling computer you're going to use a thing, and then you're going to tell it how to, like, what to start with. So we're going to say let where, yeah, I'm going to say where equal to, let's say 1. That's fine. You might play with that starting value later, but for now I'm just going to say, hey, where should I draw this thing? I'm going to draw it at starting at position 1. So we have done the first 2 steps, right? So we have let the computer know we're going to use a variable, and we have given it starting value. So now let's figure out. So I want to use it to help me draw the word sync. And in fact, sync should go, I think of sync should go down. So I'm going to use, instead of 50, I'm going to put where here. So that's, now notice this is not in quotes. Not in quotes means the computer would be like, oh, you don't actually mean where. You mean the variable called where, which is holding something else. So I'm going to grab whatever it's currently holding and stick it in here. So currently it's holding 1. So I'm going to stick it here. So I'm going to draw the text. Essentially, when you translate this out, it's like draw the word sync at X position equals 150 and Y position equal to whatever the where variable currently equals, which is 1. Okay, then the last step, change it. So let's say I want to add where is equal to where plus 1. So what that's doing is whatever we had stored 1 in our variable where, but we're saying, okay, no, now we want to add 1 to it. So we're now going to change it to 2. So then the next time draw loop comes back around, it's setting up the text size, it's setting up the font, and then it's drawing sync at X position 150 and Y position equal to whatever where the where variable is holding, which is 2. So now we didn't write very many lines of code, but that thing should sync. And we've done it. So that's how you do animation. Just a few extra lines of code, flipbook style. And you can kind of think about what is actually happening, right? Like draw function is going over and over. Every time you're drawing the text sync, you're asking it to look up what the where variable is holding. And every time you've done it, you add 1 to that where variable, that number that's currently being stored by the where variable. And you're slowly moving it down, and then it has the illusion of movement. So you can think about, what do you want to animate? You don't have to animate just the Y. You can essentially use a variable to do whatever. Like if you have, I think, Dr. Bertram, you had said you wanted to do something that changed in scale. Let's try that. So like you probably have a really cool text, right? Oh, actually, let's do this. Remember, you just have to think about, okay, wait, what is controlling the size of my text? Text size, hopefully, right? So let's say I have a different variable that's going to be size now. And maybe I start it with, maybe I'll start with 1, hilariously small. So then, so I've declared a variable, I've initialized it, 2 steps. Then I need to figure out where to use it. I'm going to use it where text size is. So size now. And then I need to change it. Size now plus 1. And you can plus whatever, it's just how fast things change. So I don't know what's going to happen. Whoa! So now it's just, whoo, it's going really big. And it won't never stop. So anything that is a number, you can turn into a variable and cause it to have some sort of animated effect. Essentially, you can do it to colors, you can do it to X position, you can do it to Y position, you can do it to size. What are you thinking that you want to do that you don't yet know how to do? Drop that in chat. Or whatever else you're running into. If anyone runs into bugs, I would love for them to share them, especially bugs you can't figure out. How to make it stop and reset. Aha, nice. Like reach a certain size and start over. If the word moves off the screen, how can you make it come back? Perfect. To make the letters move separately from each other, do you need to have them be different calls to text? Let me first address the first two questions, which actually is the same solution, right? It's the idea of resetting. And then Jasper, I think we can get to your question. So essentially, like, let's say for me, let's first focus on if I had this size going, woo. Oh wait, I need to actually move it down. This is now silly because I can't see it. Okay, I'm gonna move my where down because I'm not actually changing the position, but just making it grow, right? But let's say like I don't want it to, this is like sinister, like right now it's like crazy. I want it to be able to stop, right? It's a construct called if statements. So we're very familiar with if statements in our life. If the light is red, please stop your car. If the light is green, please go, or people will honk at you, right? So there's a same thing happening that you can use in programming. So basically you can, if statement starts off with the keyword if, and then inside the round parenthesis, you're asking a question. And the question should be a yes or no question. So the yes or no question here we can ask is like, hey, is the size now too big? So the way you can frame that mathematically or computationally is you have the size now variable that's holding your current size. So you could say, hey, is it way bigger than I want? And you can set that threshold to be whatever. Then you see how I know just use some curly brackets. So curly brackets here is indicating like, you know, if the answer to that question I put in the round parenthesis is true, then I'm going to do the instructions that are inside the curly brackets. Okay, so here is where you can do a reset. So let's say I reset it to what I started with, which is I think 1. So then it'll go whoop, right? So I already know most people have a follow-up question, and I think I am able to guess what that is, and then we'll address it. So the same thing can happen where if you're affecting movement. So if your thing was sinking down or moving across, you can imagine, so if I stop this, and now let's say I'm actually using just the sync. So, oh wait, what happened to my sync? Oh, my size is too small. Okay, so sinking, and then I want it to come back up, right? Then it's the same question, like where is the variable that's holding, you know, how far down I've gone? So I could ask if where gets beyond 400, which is the size of my canvas, maybe I want to pop it back up. And then hopefully it goes whoop, and then when it goes whoop, it resets. So I do a project sometimes in my classes, which is like make your own looping GIF. And the kids seem to like that, which forces them to use this if statement, because in order for things to loop, you have to use an if statement to know when you need to loop. Okay, awesome. So the construct to actually solve both of those problems, how to get the size to reset and how to get the thing to move, come back around, is very similar. I have a feeling some people are like maybe wondering like, well, I don't want it to just like pop back at the top, or I don't want it to just like pop back to size 0. I want it to kind of increase and decrease and increase and decrease, right? Totally also doable. It's a couple more lines of code because you have to think about directions, right? We can get to that in a bit. Jasper, your question, to make the letters move separately from each other, do you need to have them be different calls to text? I think that's probably the easiest, because then what you can do is, let's say I want my syncs to sync at different rates. Then let's say I have my S placed there, and then my I placed a little bit over, like 160. I can have where 2 text N 170, where 3, right? Like, so these are now different variables. I haven't created them up top yet, which I will need to do. Where 4. Okay, so I've used a bunch of variables I haven't created. So let's go create them. So let where 2 equals 200. Oh my gosh, I can't type. And then I'm just going to copy paste since I can't type. Where 3, where 4. So they all start the same place, right? And then I'm using them to draw this, but I can decide here to change them at different rates. Maybe one falls slower or faster, and one falls even slower, and then one falls super fast. Like 4. See what happens. Oops, didn't have the effect that I want. What happened? Okay, let's see. Oh, because I forgot. This should be where 2 equals where 2 plus 2. We're trying to change, like, you make each variable increase its by itself. So now they kind of, I don't know if you saw, it kind of fell at different rates. And then what you might have a guess of why only the S came back around, because I only wrote the code to come back around with for one of the variables. But I could have it come back around, right? Like I could even just in here, I could be super lazy and be like, I'm not gonna check for everyone. But when the S comes back around, then they all come back around. Oops, equal. Okay, shouldn't talk and type at the same time. Where 4 equals. That might be kind of weird, actually, because then the soloist one will just pop out of existence. kind of works. And you can combine a lot of these effects, actually. I actually want my size to be bigger now. There, much better. Okay. Okay, so I think Jasper, hopefully that answers your question. So there are different ways to do it, but one of the ways is to split it up and then give it kind of associate each of the things with a different variable, so you can have control them in different rates. What else are people wondering about? Ooh, slowing down the animation. Yeah, great idea. So a couple ways to do that. One way is you control how fast it is when you're changing the variable. So if you just make these numbers very small, you could do it. The other way, which also works, I call it the even lazier way. Programmers are such lazy people. We have different ways, so many different ways to do it, is to actually change the frame rate. So usually it's at 30. So if you change it at 10, I believe like it should slow it way down. It looks a little choppier though, right? Like you can see how it looks a little choppy, because frame rate means like how often is the canvas being redrawn. So how often is that draw function running? So when you slow it way down, you might actually kind of see the refreshes. Oh, now it's like molasses. It's like painful to watch. Did that answer your question, Mark? Yeah, cool. All right. How are yours looking? Anyone running into bugs? Anything not working? I say that with an evil glint in my eye because I love bugs. And see, I think we're going till 2. I love like in another 5-ish minutes for folks who feel like it to share. We could just drop links into the chat with each other, or if anyone feels like getting kind of doing a share screen, that could work too.
I don't seem to be able to. I think it has to do with the numbers that I'm using, but I don't seem to come around. It's going over here and then it's not.
Yeah, would you be comfortable sharing your screen? Carly, can share screen?
I think
stop share.
I think they should be able to if you stop sharing.
Okay.
Okay, hold on.
Try it.
Can you see it?
Yes. Okay, awesome. So let's see what's going on. So you want to hit play for me so we can see what it does and then what it doesn't do. So, whoa, that's so cool. Okay, and then, but you're hoping that once it goes off, it would kind of start back, right? Like it loops. Okay, so I see your variables. Could you scroll down for me?
Hold on one second. Okay.
Yeah, it gets a little weird when you're sharing screen. This looks great. Okay, so you're using the variable where for your text, which is perfect. And then where equals to where -1, which lets you go up. right? Which is great. So that's, I think, the trick. So because where is decreasing, it will never become bigger than 400, because that's the question you're asking for in the if statement, right? Like if my where variable becomes bigger than the number 400, then I'm going to reset it. But for you, because you're trying to go up, right? Your where is probably starting at like 200 and then going down to like 199, 198, 197, and then it will never get to 400. So your question is probably more like if where less than something like 100 or 0 or something, you might have to play with that number and then see if that works. Something. And then when you reset it, your where, instead of where equals 1, you probably want to reset it to where you started with, which I think was where equals 200. Is that your starting value, I think?
Yes.
Yeah, so I would reset it to where you started. So then let's see if that works. Whoop. So it kind of worked. But what are you noticing?
It's still, it's not necessarily resetting to.
One thing is resetting, but not the other thing.
Yes.
Right. You have two things changing. You have your Y position changing because it's flying off to the right, but you have your size also changing, right? Using your size now equals the size now plus 1. So if you want both to reset, you also need to reset the size now variable. So you can add another line inside the curly, between the curly braces. Yeah. Add another line in there that says size now equal to something, whatever it was that you had. You don't even need to ask an if there. You can just be like, well, if I'm resetting, I'm just going to reset everything. So you can say size now equals whatever it is you started with. I don't.
50.
50. Yeah. See if that helps.
So just, it's just size now equals 50. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, so that's, you're telling it like, hey, when I reset, I want to reset both the where and I want to reset the size. So that it truly resets the thing. I love how it's sort of flying to the side. It's really cool.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else either running into like, mine's not working, or like, check out this thing I made? Jasper seems like you, yes, Jasper, you got the bouncy thing to work. That's
yeah,
awesome.
I got the bouncy thing to work, but now I'm trying to separate the words and the letters. I have them 20 pixels apart, but they're actually, some of them overlap and some of them have a gap. So I don't know.
Oh, would you mind sharing screen?
Yeah.
I love
it. This one.
I love looking at other people's code. Okay, so
I have it
cool.
like that, but then there's a huge gap here, but then those are overlapping. I mean, is it just because the letter is so much bigger?
That's interesting. It might just be that it's not like, what is it called? Like fixed width font. So it may just be the M is a lot wider. Huh.
That's a little better, but it seems.
Yeah,
it seems kind of strange.
It does seem strange. Let's test it. Like instead of jump, which is really cool, do a different letter and see if it's a matter of the code or if it's a matter of the letter. Like do J.
What if I just put
N,
an N in there? Yeah.
So it might just be the M is a lot wider. Oh, what if you do the same letter for all 4?
Well, that looks pretty good.
Yeah, so I think it's just a matter of that the width of the letter was wider. So you can decide to place M, like instead of 20, 20, 20, one of them goes a little further just to like
yeah,
account for it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I noticed these lovely animations. If you all want are like hating now that gray background color, here's a little gift, which is a background command. It's also a color command. So you can give 3 numbers to the background command and change the background color. Let me see. If I can share screen real quick to show you what I mean. So like we all got stuck with this gray background. You are not stuck. You are never stuck. So you can change this. So if you, this is actually a color command. If you give any color command a single number, it assumes you want some shade of gray, which is very drab, but you know, that's what it does. But you can make it awful. I'm gonna make it super awful right now. Oh, gross, right? Like, oh. But you can change it to whatever color. So in your animation, maybe that has an effect. Also, I can introduce you to one of my favorite palette generators, coolers.co. It generates beautiful color palettes that I just copy. So I'm gonna start the generator. Give me a good color, people. Good color combination. These are nice. Okay, so then I just copy. Oops, what do I want? I want this thing. I want to show me RGB. Give me the RGB color, copy it. And then I can just copy that as my background color. And then let's say I want this beautiful color, bright orange. Then I can change that. And then I will have a nicer color palette. And then of course you can also add shapes, right? Like I spent time when I did the float thing to draw kind of like a water line. You can do that, right? There are shape commands. Like, where can I do this? I'm gonna do this at the top. So like, for example, let's say I want to draw a rectangle shape. Oh my God, I just typed shape. Rectangle. It goes top like X, Y. So it's X and Y. So I want it to be really just on the edge of the canvas, so 0, and then maybe a little bit further down, so like 100 maybe. And then I want it to be as wide as the canvas and as tall as it is just offset. And then maybe I want this rectangle to be, I don't know, really dark blue. So, or light blue, I don't really know. Oops. We'll just play with it and see what happens. Oh, yeah, you know, has an effect. Yeah, I don't love it, but we'll see. So you can kind of make a scene for it. You can also do things like importing images and stuff. There's code for knowing how big the character size is. I had to use it. Keith, is that a question? I wasn't sure if that's a question. Oh, because of the size. Oh, you were talking about Jasper's. How are folks doing? Anyone wanting to share where you got to for your wordplay? You can drop a link if you don't feel like coming on camera or like unmuting, or if you do, that's cool too. Can hex codes be put in for colors as well? I believe you can. You put it in quotes with the little hashy thing, I think. Technical term, hashy thing. Yes, so I think that's all. Yeah, I would love for folks to drop their wordplay link and then, or like, and or share a moment of surprise or what you will take away. We have about 10 minutes left. Carly, anything? You said you've got some questions ahead of time that we may want to go through.
I did. I know folks had some questions. I will pull them up. But if anyone has questions in the next 10 minutes, feel free to unmute and go for it.
Yeah, or unmute and show us your wordplay too. Those are fun. Ooh, I want to see. Is it okay, Carly, if I pull it up on my screen?
Yeah, sure. I wanted to have it swing back and forth, but I think that'll involve some directionality. Messing with everything.
Yeah. The sketches link, you just grab it from the URL at the top. That's why it's so easy. There are ways to, if you go up to like file share, you can get like a full screen link. But I usually like to just grab the button because then people can see the code also. Ooh, oh, I see what you mean. Like kind of like a swingy.
Yeah.
Cool. Yours isn't, Mark, yours isn't showing. So Mark, for you, can you see the file line and then go to file share? You could grab any of these links. The last link, the edit link, is also kind of what will show you kind of this view of it. Thanks, Carly, for this. Where can you learn more? Oh, I'll share some resources in the last few minutes of where you can learn more. You don't have a share under file. That might mean you're not logged in. Ooh, I love works in progress. Thank you, Kristen. May I pull it up? I should have asked you. May I pull it up? Is that okay? Whoa, here it comes. Whoa, there it goes. I like how ominous it looks. It's like the Star Wars, like when the ship that, what is that thing called? The like Emperor ship comes in. Yeah, Mark, I think you have to save it and then you can share. These are great, you guys.
I found one question that came in.
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't know that this person was able to make it, but maybe they'll watch the recording. But they're asking, how do you balance class structure when folks are coming in with different levels of programming knowledge? So from beginners, sort of like what you did with us. You knew there was going to be some
yeah.
beginners, some more
I
advanced
will have to
folks.
say I have not solved that problem yet. It's just a lot of experimentation. I've done things like what I did today, which is just like come right out and say like, I know there are folks with different experience. If you're someone with more experience, feel free to ignore everything I'm saying because if you don't need it, and just go right to work. So if I feel like if you actually kind of, because I think a lot of times when we're used to teaching kind of people who are around the same level, what we do is like we give a lot of content and instructions and then we give the project, right? When you're, I think, approaching something where you have different kind of ability level, or I don't even call it ability level, it's really just experience level in the group. I flip it. I actually tell them, here's the project. And if you feel like you know how to get started, you can ignore everything I'm about to say, put on some headphones, just tune me out, because then you get right into work. And then for those who are like, I don't know how to get started, then hang on and we'll kind of go through it together. So that's one way. Another way, right now we're in project mode in my classes, which means every kid is doing something different, right? Like there is no lecturing at that point. I actually rely a lot. So I do a lot of individual check-ins, but I also do exit tickets. So at the end of every class, I ask kids like, what are you currently stuck on? And because sometimes I can't get to every kid, like I admit it. But then if I look through these and I'm like, oh, that kid is stuck on how to do rotation, I will just film a short little video. And then when the class meets again, I'll just give the kid like, here, I can't be right next to you to show it to you, but I saw that you were stuck on this. Use this video to get you started. And then if I do that for enough kids, then they all sort of, there's like, that's how I clone myself, basically. An easy way to clone yourself so that you can be simultaneously explaining 10 different things to 10 different kids when they need to work. So that's another thing I'm currently trying, because, and those questions could be at all different levels, right? And I do usually think, at least for the age group I teach, that may not be true for the university level. Some people are like, well, why do you have to film the video? There's like a zillion videos online. I actually think for the middle school age, it does matter that it's me filming it because they know me, they know my style, and that they already have this connection with me. So when they're watching me on screen, it does feel more like me talking to them versus Angie's just kind of like, right? Like Angie doesn't want to bother explaining this to me and it's like gave me this video to some other person, right? So I do kind of make that effort to film the video. I think for adults or for like, college students, maybe that becomes less of an issue. I'm not sure. And you can just send like, oh, here's a coding train video, which I'll talk about what coding train is too. Okay, this was really cool. I think this was Mark's, right? Ooh, so cool. Okay, what else? Oh, I got 2 copies of it. Yay. Wait, Monica, you were doing this on the phone? Wow, that's impressive. Whoa, so many things happening. So cool. Syncing and kind of whatever it's called, zooming. Super cool. I see Fareshta, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. How I structure my course over the term. Yeah. The class I teach has a very particular structure. My class only meets once a week for 75 minutes. And it's only a semester. So I literally only have about 16 classes total with kids, and each of those classes are 75 minutes long. So there's not much we can't dive super deep on stuff. So the 6th grade class is the intro class. This is the first time actually, no matter what experience level kids have, this is generally the first time they've seen p5.js. So it's a lot of intro projects that teach kind of basic skills or let them practice basic skills. I have one that I call Coding Pictionary. Or coding charades, we call it in class. I actually wrote that up on my website, and I can share that with you all if you want. It's just teach.angichow. I think. I hope it's up. Who knows? The coding charade. So basically, like, essentially, I actually print out a bunch of prompts for kids, and then they have to draw a prompt from a hat, and then they have to depict that using less than 20 lines of P5 code, and then we play charades in class. And the prompts are very, like, depending on what grade level. So 6th grade tends to be a little bit more concrete, like maybe like a dessert, or favorite holiday or something like that. But I've even done really abstract stuff, like the feeling of being late for class. How do you depict that with 20 lines of code? Good luck, So that's really just to get them started coding. Oh yeah, thanks, Carly. I'll give you some more links later. I've also done things like called one shape drawing to really constrain. I think like to start, I really like to start with really constrained projects. So one shape drawing is like you have to pick a shape. It could be a rectangle, it could be a circle, it could be a triangle. But that's the only, once you pick it, that's the only shape you get to use, and then you have to use that to make a drawing of something. And you could put other limits on it, like 20 versions of that shape or something like that. But usually, so for the intro class, I kind of step them through an arc of like, let's learn how to draw. Now let's learn how to animate. Now, from animation, we always get to if statement, because everybody always asks about how to loop or how to reset. So then you'll get to if conditionals. Then usually I do something on interactivity, because I think that makes that's another powerful part of P5, which is interactive things, which we didn't get to here. I wish we had time. It would be so fun. Building something interactive into your project. And then I usually then do something about loops, the structure for loops, which allows you to make patterns. And I've done kind of projects like make optical illusions or make optical art. Again, kids can take it to whatever level they want, but pretty easy to just make a repeating pattern. And sometimes I actually print them on stickers for them, and then they get to take that home. Yeah, so all sorts of different things. Right now in 8th grade, I'm teaching a data visualization class, so it's structured quite differently, but also we are still doing it in P5. I don't know if that answered kind of enough.
Thank you.
But yeah, I'm hoping to write up some of these projects. And oh yeah, I do have an Instagram or Twitter. It's Angie Chow at Twitter. That's the easiest one, probably. That's where I do a lot of my creative coding kind of networking. So please do follow me and feel free to write to me. One thing that I'm thinking about doing for supported by Processing Foundation is Saber Khan is the education director there, and we are talking about like, should we do some sort of like coding together kind of hangout every so often, where like it might just be me and him, and then we like do a project prompt and just like kind of literally do kind of what we just did, like code along, chat about stuff. Other people can join in live if they want and code along with us and then ask us questions, or they can watch it later. And so we have like so many of these like project ideas that could be kind of fun. Oh, thanks. Awesome. Wait, Jasper, let's show yours, and then I'm going to share some resources for you guys who want to do more. Jump! I love it. Oh, I love how they jump. Oh, it looks so joyous. That makes me happy. I have not tried using p5.js in a browser extension. Yeah, I have no experience with that. So before I forget, so going further, there's lots of different ways. If this has piqued your interest in P5, the P5 website itself has a treasure trove of examples and other things you can do, right? Another favorite of mine, YouTube Coding Train, is a video series by Dan Schiffman, who is a professor at NYU, I believe, ITP program maybe. He has so many videos. It's gonna be like, you just have to pick. You can't be FOMO about this, because otherwise you'll just be watching videos for the rest of your life. But he has a heavy focus on creative coding in p5.js. He has lots of kind of beginner projects, as well as super kind of like advanced level projects on machine learning and things like that. There's a book that recently came out that I am loving, which is called Code as Creative Medium. It's written by 2 teachers who are interactive media artists, and they teach in kind of in that realm. Yes, Dr. Berger has it. What's lovely about this book is it's language agnostics. It's just a bunch of project prompts. So like there's one that's like face generator, right? And then it talks about all the different variations of that assignment, and you can adapt it to whatever coding language you want. So I think it's like a kind of a lovely book for educators who do this kind of stuff to have. And then I don't know if you're familiar with Cadence, which is like an online course platform. I like their courses because there's a kind of heavier lean towards kind of the artistic applications of technology. So there's an intro to programming for visual artists with p5.js. I think Laura McCarthy, the person who started p5.js, is one of the instructors of it. And then even like there's even things like machine learning for artists and musicians. So kind of lots of different resources. Yeah, and if I do kind of any of these code along things, you'll definitely hear about it on Twitter. Have I used open processing? So I have used open processing. I don't use it in my class because it costs money and I'm very cheap. So that's the only reason, because like my school already used Google Classroom as kind of the core, the learning management system. Open processing is sort of a learning management system with code. And so I didn't really need the dashboard side of it. I just needed kids a way to code. But I've heard great things about open processing, especially if you're like, I need both a way to manage students and to kind of like have them be able to code in a place and share stuff with me easily. I think I don't know how much it costs. I looked at it, it cost money. I was like, we don't need it. So I kind of stopped there. Oh, thank you. I haven't heard of that one. I'm gonna have to pull that one up, that resource. All right, I think I might be out of time.
I think we're at time. This was so much fun. Thank you for having us code along with you, teaching
yeah, thank you for playing along. I hope you guys have fun.
Angie, will you would you mind sharing your like slideshow and resources? And
do you want me to just send it to you later?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. All you, Dr. Bertram.
Oh, that was fantastic. Yes, as someone said, they appreciate the teaching style. I mean, even like as an adult, I'm just like, I need those like bite-sized bits. I need the explanations. I need the drawings. I need the box to wear on it. I need all of those things. I'm a very sort of physical visual learner that way. So that was perfect. And that was, I've been working with P5 of it myself, and your explanation of things like translate, which are actually like really kind of weird things to sort of understand. Like, because if we remember from like graphing in math class, like we always had X and Y where like 0, 0 is at the center. So like, that's, I think, how a lot of people are approaching it. And that 0, 0 is somewhere else in P5 is kind of confusing. So super appreciate the teaching style and taking us through the steps. Very, very, beneficial, I think, especially also for those of us who maybe are going to be attempting to teach this to students and work on it ourselves. So I just want to turn our attention to our next event, which is going to be happening in December. It's December 3rd at 10 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll have Brandy Easter and Sukanya Anjaya having a conversation with us on weird/esoteric programming languages. And there's a few other related events that are also going to be happening upcoming, and they're in the If Then workshop document, Google Doc. And I see Carly's already adding some resources there as well. I'm just going to pop that Google Doc back in the chat real quick so that everybody has access to it. And when the recording is ready and set, that link will also be added to the Google document and will be circulated. So I think that probably covers it all. Unless Carly, is there anything I'm missing?
Nope, that's it. That's all, I think, for now. But you all get way too many emails from me. But thanks. Another Zoom round for Angie.
Yes, thanks so much.
Thank you to you all.
This was so much fun and good to see you all, and hopefully see you at other events. Bring your friends, invite people. It'll be a good time.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye. Thank you again, Angie.
Thank you. This was super fun.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
There was some cool stuff.
Yeah,
made,
you'll have to let us know when it's up on your YouTube, and we can share it around too.
Yeah, and if you do the code along projects, the things that you were talking about just sounded really great, and I just followed you on Twitter, so Yeah, if you do that, I would love to participate. So.
Oh, that'd be so fun. Yeah, I need to talk to Saber if that's something we want to do. Or we both want to do it, whether we can find time when both of us are free. Because I tried doing something on my YouTube channel where it was like this, except I didn't have an audience, and then it just became like people. I was like, oh, maybe kids will watch this. Kids don't watch this. They don't know me. They're not gonna watch rando lady teaching them coding. But then a lot of teachers are like, oh, some of these